I warned y'all. Y'all was banking on Biden to give y'all student loan forgiveness. And now look at you. Dusty. Dusty as fuck out here in these streets. Y'all was waiting on Biden to give y'all student loan forgiveness. Yep, you was waiting on Biden to give you student loan forgiveness. And now you dusty. This is according to the Los Angeles Times. All right. It's saying that the Supreme Court struck down Biden's plan to forgive millions of student loans. And y'all was out here, swore that y'all was going to. Listen. You told me that I was wrong, and I was absolutely right. You told me that I was wrong, and I was absolutely right. Some of y'all was out here saying, Anton, Biden is going to forgive our student loans. I'm holding out. A lot of y'all didn't pay it off. Y'all did not want to go out there and take care of business. You thought that you was going to vote a certain type of way because Biden was going to forgive your student loans, and I warned you. I warned you. I told you. I'm right. I'm always fucking right. I'm always right. I told you that the Supreme Court, or not the Supreme Court, I told you was still going to have to pay them student loans. But let's deep dive into it a little bit. Let's go down. It says, Supreme Court on Friday rejected President Biden's plan to forgive millions of student loans, ruling the nation's chief executive did not have the legal authority to waive more than $400 billion owed to the government. Pay your share. Pay your share. So now those of us that ain't worried about no student loans because we were responsible. We went to community college. Yes, I am a community college guy. We hustled. We worked. Because how can you justify forgiving student loans because of an election pledge? How you going to be sitting here fucking up the money for the federal government? And it's not fair. It's not going to be fair for the people that come after it because they're going to be like, well, y'all had a leg up on us. It's a system that's built against us the same way that y'all talking about this whole white supremacy shit when y'all trying to justify reparations and everything like that. How you going to sit here? Come on, let's talk about it. How you going to sit here and think that this makes sense and then y'all sat there and y'all voted for this man based off of the fact that you thought that you was going to get a leg up. You thought that you was going to get a handout. You thought that you was going to get a handout. So now I knew the Supreme Court was going to do this because they're fair and they're just and they're logical. Biden administration had asserted its right to cancel the loans as a part of its emergency response to C-19. Well, we're not in C-19 no more. That's A. Let's see. And under the 2003 law called the HEROES Act, passed at the time of the Iraq War, by a 6-3 vote in Biden versus Nebraska, the court conservatives said that only Congress could authorize such a large-scale cancellation of the government-provided loans, and it had not done so. Let me break it down for y'all. Let me give you a little bit of insight. One of the reasons why we have all of these legislative branches is so that you don't operate under a dictatorship. And the beauty of America, even though the system is not perfect, even though the system is flawed, is that there's checks and balances in place so that we're not operating like we Russia. So we're not operating like we in China, right? And so because we have different legislative branches that then are able to, it's supposed to put checks and balances, and they're also supposed to be operating in a way in which they can vote or they can advocate on the best interests of the people that they represent, their constituents, and they're the people that voted them into office. Because Congress didn't do this, you can't have somebody that's in here and you got all of these Bidens and stuff like this. And this is why y'all have to start participating in your local elections instead of just participating in the national election, because he was never going to be able to forgive your student loans in the first place. And so now the Supreme Court came, and this is another thing, right? Another reason why it's important, and even the Ketanji Brown, I think her name was Ketanji Brown, and she's recently been nominated into the Supreme Court on behalf of Biden. This is another reason why it's important for y'all to actually participate in your election, because a lot of y'all say, well, my vote don't count. Okay, well, first, you do need to participate in your local election. The second thing that you need to take into consideration is that the person that is nominated and the person that winds up becoming the president is often at times the person that's also going to pick the person that becomes a part of the Supreme Court that then can rule for or against the things that you thought that you was going to get a handout for in the first place. So shout out to the conservatives. When there's a Supreme Court justice that steps down, then the president participates in nominating or making a recommendation of who then is a part of the Supreme Court going forward. So now you have these people that we need to move more conservatively that speaks to the issues that happens in America, such as the fact that no, you cannot, it's a web designer that refused to do work for an alphabet community couple, right? And they did not want to do that work for that alphabet community couple because they didn't agree with what it was that they was asking them to do. And so you're not going to bully me into doing it, and the Supreme Court ruled correctly on that. And then they also ruled correctly on the fact that pay your shit. You took out the loans, you got educated, you benefited as a result of it. Women are the most enrolled, but the most getting these basket weaving degrees. You should have never enrolled in that program in the first place. And no, we're not going to forgive your student loans. Y'all got finessed into voting for this man, and he never had the authority to be able to do this in the first place. But it says, writing for the majority, Chief Justice John Roberts said the HEROES Act allows the secretary to waive or modify existing statutory or regulatory provisions applicable to financial assistance programs under the Education Act, but it does not allow the secretary to rewrite the statute to the extent of canceling $430 billion in student loans principal. Nah, pay your shit. You're not just going to finesse us and change the laws and be able to do what you want to do. In dissent, Justice Alina Keegan, I'm going to be reading Super Chat shortly, wrote, in every respect, the court today exceeds its proper, limited role in our nation's governance. The result here is that the court substitutes itself for Congress and the executive branch in making national policy about student loan forgiveness. The heavy burden of student loans has become a major issue for Democrats. That's because they know that they promised y'all something that they wasn't going to be able to deliver in the first place. As a candidate in 2020, Biden promised to forgive up to $10,000 in student loans for many young borrowers, but he did not seek legislation from Congress when it was under Democratic control. Last year, with the end of the pandemic in sight, he joined Education Secretary Miguel Cardona to announce the government, as a part of its C-19 response, would forgive $10,000 of most outstanding student loans and up to $20,000 for those from those who came from low-income families. About 26 million borrowers applied for the relief. Y'all went over to that website and applied for the relief, and they're not giving it to you. Pay your shit. But the policy's legal status remained in doubt. The 2003 HEROES Act said the Education Department could waive or modify any provision of the government-funded student loans for any borrower affected a war or other military operation or a national emergency. Lawmakers said that their aim was to extend temporary relief to those who were called up to serve in Iraq and to make sure that they were not in a worse position financially because of their service. It was supposed to be meant for service members. It was supposed to be meant for people that fought for our country. And then they used this HEROES Act that they voted on and then they enacted in order to then try to justify an emergency situation and saying, well, C-19 is an emergency. So now we can justify and pledge that we're going to get all of these student loans forgiven, when in reality, it was never meant for you in the first place. And so they finessed something that they was never supposed to have enacted in the first place, because it's supposed to be for the people that serve their country and put their lives on the line for our freedom. It's never supposed to be meant for you because you chose to go on the basket weaving degree. In March 2020, President Trump declared a national emergency in response to C-19, and his administration suspended the required payments and the accrued interest on outstanding student loans. The suspensions have remained in effect and have cost the government more than $100 billion. There's your reparations. You should have paid off your shit. Deciding to go further, always somebody that just pushed the envelope. Biden said the cost of higher education has skyrocketed and left many students with crushing debts. And the White House said its plan to forgive some or all of millions of loans will provide more breathing room to America's working families as they continue to recover from the strains associated with the C-19 pandemic. But attorneys for Nebraska and 5 other Republican-led states sued and argued that the president was unlawfully invoking the C-19 pandemic to assert power beyond anything Congress could have conceived. That was never meant for you in the first place. In defense of the plan, the administration's lawyer said Congress had indeed authorized the Education Department to waive or modify any provision of the student aid programs. They also argued the states had no standing to sue because they were not harmed by the president's decision to forgive loans. Cap. But the federal appeals court in St. Louis sided with the Republican-led states and blocked the loan cancellation program from taking effect. In December, the Supreme Court refused to lift that order and agreed to hear the administration's appeal in late February. Led by Roberts, the court's conservatives said they were highly skeptical of the notion that the 2003 law or the pandemic gave the administration authority to wipe away millions of loans. And so, as a result, now y'all out here looking dumb. You know, I was a kid that was in class that was never afraid to be able to stand up and read in front of the class. I didn't raise my hand first, but whenever he called me, I was out there reading my ass off. Whenever the teacher called me in class in school and he said, Anton, it's your turn to read in front of the classroom, I never had any. I was a C student. I am a lifetime C student, but I can read and I can do math. I can do arithmetic, and I can also break down exactly what I'm reading from a C student's perspective. And the reality is that I'm also able to see the writing on the wall, and that y'all really thought you had all these black women, and that's the way in which they finessed y'all to vote somebody in office, and now you got inflation fucking out of control. You got the recession on the horizon. You can't afford to pay your rent. You can't afford to pay for your car note. Repossessions is up all the way across the board. Chat GBT about to eliminate your job. And you thought that you was going to get some student loan forgiveness. And the reality is that you got your ass kicked. And so you need to do the thing that's in your best interest. Make sure you join the Patreon. Link is in the description as well as pinned to the top of the chat. And I'm going to show you how you can really get rid of your student loans instead of waiting for daddy. You know, daddy's home. Instead of waiting for daddy to go over there and forgive your student loans. It ain't happening. It ain't going to work for you. It's plenty of ways for you to be able to do it. You can work for the government for 10 years, right? You can pay your shit. You can go to community college. You can get a job. You can actually go into a field that allows for you to make enough money to be able to pay your stuff back. You can stop slutting it out. You can stop taking out credit cards and student loans in college and partying up and then thinking that somebody is supposed to come back and then pay their taxes so that you can steal money from the government in order to forgive your shit. No. Shout out to the Supreme Court. Shout out to them for doing the thing that's in the best interest of the people and the American people. And take ownership and responsibility of what it is that you got going on in these streets. This is what I was waiting on. I was actually paying attention to this and I was waiting on it. Yep. So, student loans kick back in late August, early September. I hope all of that money that you said that you were saving, you didn't go out there and buy a Charger or a Challenger or a Hellcat. Y'all not out here parking y'all Escalade on y'all lawns. And you ready to send that money on over to the federal government. Shout out to the federal government for collecting on their bills. The Piper. It's time to pay the piper.